What's up, guys? This is Tucker at MACkite.
Jeff.
Today we got a special overview for you to show you. This is a brand new board from KT called the Arc. This guy here is a little different looking because it's a sample prototype, but the shape is the same, the dimensions are the same. So we thought we'd bring you our experience, point out some of the finer details on this board, and give you some experience on who might want this board, what sizing, what application it might be best for, so that you can make your determination going into this summer what your quiver might look like.
And we love our KT boards. One of our favorite brands and boards that we sell.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time on the Super K.
Good board.
And we're going to dive a little bit into how does this board differ from the Super K? What do we think about it? I had an opportunity to just got this a week ago.
Yeah.
Thanks KT for sending it to us. I went down to Florida, and didn't get any big waves on it, but I got in some of the causeways, Indian River, and I'm pretty stoked about this board. It's definitely a premium board because it's pro carbon.
Yeah, premium construction, premium board, premium design, premium price. We'll get into that, but this is it, the KT Arc.
Very lightweight, very surf-driven shape.
Solid construction too, not just light, but tough, solid. So starting with that, the construction, this uses the KT dual shock core. So what you have is a lighter weight inner core, keeps the board crazy light, and then they shoot it again in a mold with a higher density foam that gives it kind of an exoskeleton, so to speak, an armor on the outside. So it's a tougher foam. It's a stiffer board, it's lighter weight, and then when you go to make repairs too, it doesn't absorb as much resin, so the board doesn't pick up as much weight when you're doing repairs. Yeah, crazy light. With the amount of inserts they have on this board, with the size of this board, with the stiffness of it, super light, crazy light.
Super light, for sure.
So the Pro Carbon construction, KT's highest level of carbon construction, has that dual density core, as well as a PVC sandwich around the entire board. So a lot of brands just do the sandwich on the top and the bottom. This totally encapsulates the rails and everything. So in addition to that heavier duty foam, you also have a layer of PVC foam, which is super tough and durable.
Stiff,
and it's wrapping everywhere. And then of course, multiple layers of carbon fiber to keep it light and stiff. But it's one of the highest level constructions I'm aware of.
And I traveled with this board. I had it in a board bag, and I had no issues with any damage to the board going both directions. Which
always a bit nice. Of a roll of the dice, but
it is.
It came through.
But I did travel with it, and very light, so it was very nice to travel with. A little long. Long. Obviously, I like to travel with 5.5 and under, but this comes in. This is the 68 liter, 5.8 by 20. And they say 4 and 0.85. I think that's where the
it's the thicker part
of the nose, which we'll get into here in a moment. But definitely
in the business area, it's around 4 inches thick.
Yeah.
So quite thin for a board of this size, and I think that's part of what sets it apart in their lineup, especially from the Super K2, which is kind of similar to this board. If we're being honest, they're definitely inspired by the Super K2 on this guy, but I think following some of our wish list ideas that the Super K2 is amazing, but maybe a little narrow, a little thick for a lot of wave riding, wave performance that we like to do. So this is KT stepping in and say, I hear you guys.
This is your surf version.
Here's your wave machine mid-length, and gaining a little bit more planability, a little bit more width, some features to help with the release and liftoff. But the key here is wave performance, shreddability, and it is a very high level.
Yeah, and talking about that, when we talk about the shape, look at the rocker. This thing does have rocker.
Yep.
That is also in the I would say this is the cockpit. It's got a little rocker to it, a little raised here, raised in the back.
Yep.
What I found right away getting on this board, it was real easy to find out where to put your feet and where to stand. It just kind of has this natural little concave pocket area here. And a big change for me is the rear area where you could put straps is moved up about 3 or 4 inches from the traditional boards of the KT Super K.
A little narrower.
I measured it. It's actually 3 to 4 inches. They moved it up. So you have more of a narrower stance, which you can really then initiate.
Yeah, don't lock them hips down, bro.
No,
You gotta
no,
be able
no.
to, be able to hit the,
Keep them open.
gotta hit them.
So that's something I really noticed. I really liked. I mean, really easy to find your foot placement in here. I did find my back foot off the rail, like right at the edge.
But it's got the pad comes right up there. Yeah.
I love it, and I would say KT is one of my favorite pads. It's got a good combination of comfort and gripability. Yeah, it doesn't fatigue the feet.
Yep.
Feels very comfortable on your feet.
Good reference points.
Very good.
You can tell they were
reference
thinking of
points.
it. You got the thicker bands here, right by the
Yep.
straps, right by where your front foot's going to be. You know, you got the center line reveal here, kind of
Super easy.
your stance split reveal here, your center line reveal here, and yeah, it's just there's indicators all over the pad, and they also help reduce the weight and give you a little bit of extra bite in those areas. So really nicely done. Definitely not run of the mill by any means in terms of the pad.
No, and the placement's perfect. My foot was here generally all the time.
Yep.
Back foot maybe about right over here when I was riding. And what I liked about it is the narrower stance and where it's located on the board. I felt like I had about just the amount off the front as I had off the back. So it felt very, very well balanced. Like the board just kind of disappeared under my feet. I mean,
Makes it feel smaller than it actually is.
big time.
Yep.
Big time.
I like to call it an elliptical cockpit is the way I like to call it, because it's not just rocker here. It does have a little bit of lip here at the edge for leverage, and you can kind of tell when you're getting near the rail. Through the middle, very flat, but also this way, it's got a little bit of kick in the front and the back. That just rolls your ankles in just a little bit, gets you more engaged in the board, gives you some leverage to push up and down, kind of like a kicktail almost, and it just gets you in the board, it feels like.
That's what it felt like.
And also takes some strain off your knees and your ankles, because when you have a dead flat board, then your feet have to kind of angle to account for that. Whereas this, you know, you got something to push against. It aligns your hips and your knees and your ankles. So ergonomically, so comfortable, so much leverage. And I think that's part of the reason why you're mentioning you didn't need to move around a lot.
Not at all.
Because once you're in
Not
that
at all.
correct spot, man, it's just, you don't need to move. You just shred.
No, I felt very connected to the board right away, very intuitive. Something else I really liked about this board is it does have a little bit of volume. Like it's a little magic hump here, right in the front. As soon as you get the water level, the board out right about there, it pops right up.
Yeah.
And you obviously
And it allows you to be in the center of the board, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to move
when
my
you're
feet.
kneeling, your balance is right there, and then when you stand up, you're still in that same position. Without this extra volume, you'd need to be more towards the tail because of the extra width in the tail versus the nose. So that's just balancing out the whole board.
Yep. I was able to start,
keeps the nose up.
start and ride, start and then ride where my front foot didn't have to move, stay in the same spot.
Easy peasy.
Depending on the foil, I was using a little bit foil that needed a little more speed to get up. I did find myself with this board as I got up, I did move my back foot up a little bit further to pump it. That's something that I found with this board. I was able to ride in quite light conditions, and I think because of this board, its shape. We'll get into the bottom here in a moment, but I was able to pump the board and the water released off it really nicely, and it didn't feel locked in at all. It felt like I could kind of let the board go where it needs to go to get me up and riding, and I was really shocked at what I was able to get up in, the wins I was able to get up in. Right. This board, we really haven't jumped into why they created this board. I guess for parawinging and winging is what I would say.
Wave performance mid-length is the way I would describe it. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't prone this, a little big maybe, but you know, downwind prone, foil drive, but I think the two that are really most apparent and are going to be most popular is going to be a parawing board and light to mid-length winging, you know, where you're using it as a light wind machine if it's bigger, but also just a traditional wave mid-length for winging in the smaller sizes, because the sizes do run from 48 to 98 liters, 5'4" all the way up to 6'4". So it's a pretty concise range, but lots of options in between those two to refine it for really what you're doing and your weight and what your conditions are. So for me, as a quiver killer, a one board quiver, 68 liters would work fantastic. Parawinging in decent conditions, winging for everything. I mean, you can ride this in pretty light wind.
And I
It's
experienced
small
it.
enough I could prone it, I could foil drive it too. So it's kind of a one board quiver, so to speak.
And this board, like I said, I was able to get up in probably under 12 knots, but you had to pump the board. I think this board, if you think of it a little bit, what's different between this board and the Super K, the Super K I think will have an initial a little bit more, without doing anything with the board, a little bit more board speed through the water.
Yeah.
But this board, if you pump the board in conjunction with pumping the wing, it released, like I said, the water dispersed and released and got up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think if we take a look at the underside, some of that might be explained.
Yep, so there's a couple things going on here as compared to the Super K, that gives it that kind of change in performance and takeoff. Number one, this whole section is a pretty continuous rocker. So rather than being all flat in here and then isolating it in the nose, this just gives a more continuous flow and roll through there, but it also gives you a bit of a teeter-totter under your stance. So rather than being forced to just ride flat and try to get it up, when you're trying to get it up, it's dragging, creating more drag. This guy, since it's continuous rocker, you can actually get it to fly a little bit without creating extra drag in the tail because of that rocker line and then the kick in the tail. And then also you have a little bit more nose rocker from what I can tell. I haven't measured it with a rocker bar, but just looking at it as compared to the Super K2, I think we have just a tad bit more nose rocker. Makes sense for a wave board, a board that's going to be, ridden more powered and through the waves, I guess. But if you have a good technique, there's something special about this continuous rocker underneath your feet. It's not enough to create a ton of drag, but it's just enough to kind of get that foil moving and almost pumping with the board on the
That's on the board, and it popped.
And you can get it to kind of
right
start
up.
to fly without dragging the tail.
Yep.
Because that's kind of the first immediate difference you see versus the Super K. Super K is dead flat out the tail for the most part, whereas this has a bit more kick. I normally don't like a ton of kick because it doesn't waste the board, but you're not planing a lot off of that. But on a board like this,
You got a lot of
nose in front of your feet. You got some good width
the width is what
on this
really,
board, so you're planing up more. It's not just a hole, although it does have a hole here and kind of blends into a sort of wild-looking double here with a bit of a channel on the edge. That just directs the flow of the water. But to keep it short and sweet, this board is a bit more technical maybe to get flying as compared to the Super K.
You got to pump it.
It's also how you're comparing it, right? This board for length and width is going to be lower volume than what you would ride in a Super K. So do you want to compare literage or do you want to compare length? The Super K is going to be a little different depending on which choice you're making there, but certainly a very surfy adaptation that does a similar low end, I would say, to the Super K, just a different technique.
Yeah, it's going to take a little more technique.
It's not going to have the autopilot as much.
No, you're not as much autopilot. You're going to have to pump a little bit with your legs. But something I did notice with this, it does have a lot of surface area. Has far less chine than the Super K. So what that translated for me is it is pretty stable side to side.
And once you get it to the surface of the water and you're kind of planing, this is going to stay at the surface more easily, create that board speed and lift off. Whereas the Super K, like you said, narrower, more chine. You're going to have more board in the water at takeoff, so it accelerates maybe a little slower than this board. And if you've got a good technique to kick up on this board, you feel a little bit of that surge, a little bit of that gust. Bam, you're up.
And what's key with this board, though, we've kind of touched on it. Where you put your feet and where everything feels natural is where you should be.
Yep.
And that, in conjunction with your pumping of the board, it all works together.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see. I mean, I got up. We have it right. First time ever riding this board, I got up in extremely light wind and just pumped it with a few pumps, and boom, I was up and riding. And there were a few on the shore, no pressure. We're watching, like, let's see if he can get up on this thing. And I was shocked. I mean, it got up pretty easy if you have technique with it. And again, once up riding, this board at 5'9", just it didn't feel that long at all.
Yeah.
I felt, again, balanced in it. I had it where I set it up. I did let a couple other people.
Mass plate.
Yeah, you can see. I put it about 2 inches from the front, and I wouldn't change it. It felt really good. I have been using the technique of setting the board upside down with the foil on it, and I hold the front foil in my hand, and you can kind of see where the board is. The board pitching forward? Is it pitching up? that's one way you can do it.
Yeah, it gets you in the ballpark. Depends on the foil, of course.
It does, but I felt like where it was located, it was perfectly, and the other two guys that wrote it were like, felt money and dialed in. So
perfect. Sizing wise, Jeff, obviously if you're riding as a light wind machine, you're gonna probably be sizing up. But as a mid-length do-it-all board, what are your thoughts on sizing?
I would say you could be quite true to what your normal board leaders would be. So if you like rock a 70-liter board, you know, in a smaller, shorter, wider size, this would work just fine because of its added length. I didn't feel like it was sinking down. I felt plenty support to get up and ride. So for me, this would be the one I would do.
Yeah, as compared to a chicken nugget board, you know, you maybe keep the same literage, but you're going to gain some light windability and ease of use.
Huge. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. If you're a 70-liter board, more of a traditional style board, I would do the same liters in this, or you could even go a little lighter, a little lower. If you're trying to, you know, do the parawing and do all of it, again, some of that's skill driven. I think my end game could be parawinging on this. To learn on this parawinging would be a challenge.
You'd want good wind.
Yeah, I want really good wind. It wouldn't be out of the question because, again, the good surface area here, I would feel like it would the side to side would be stable enough. So I think right around that 65 to 8, this board right here would be what I would choose for myself.
I think I would say, you know, again, I could see myself riding this board as a one board quiver, especially with parawing, you know. In lighter conditions, a lot of times I want more than 68 liters for parawinging, but given the length and efficiency of this, I think, you know, this could work well for me. As compared to other mid-lengths, let's say Super K2 or other boards out there, you know, coming from that, or if you're deciding between a Super K2 and this, I would say you could size down in this.
Agree.
Because it is, you know, a bit wider, it's got good length, it's very efficient. You know, as long as we're not talking sub 10 knots of wind, you know, this board has enough efficiency. You don't need the literage. You know, once you're moving 2 miles an hour, this board's planing, so it doesn't matter at that point. So if you're right now riding a 95 liter Super K, you know, I would say you can size down into a 70 pretty easily. You know, as long as you're not dealing with super light winds and you're going to, you know, benefit from that more nimble, playful board. You know, with the foils you're riding, be cognizant of your width. You know, because you still want to keep a good gas pedal there. You still want, you know, to control those wider foils. If you're riding a 1,300, 1,400 centimeter foil, span-wise, you know, you still need 19 and a half inches or so, or 20 inches to control that properly. So I would say, yeah, you know, be cognizant of the length, be cognizant of your width, don't overshoot, but you can definitely size down this model because of, you know, the cockpit, it's cut out volume, so it's not accounted for.
And the added length and the added width that this has compared to this. Similarly, if we're looking at KT Super K 70 liter, which is narrower, you know, this has that stability and that comfortable platform when you first get on it. Yeah. You'd be pleasantly surprised. Again, when we're talking about proper size boarding, when you get in the these midi sizes, you're really looking at that length and width versus the liters.
And the application.
Yep.
You know, if you're riding in really light winds, if you want to ride in 6 knots, volume matters a lot. Does. You need a minimum of your weight in liters, ideally a little more.
Yep.
And if you're riding above 10 knots and you have a good wing, you're fairly powered, you can size down till your heart's content. I've ridden boards as small as 40 liters. As long as you have that length and planability, no issues.
Yeah. And this board sits a little lower in the water, obviously, just because it's got a little more width to it, and it's a little it's thinner from top to bottom than the Super K is.
Yep. So as soon as it's moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Money.
It is money.
Once that nose gets to the surface, you're home free.
And so I have yet to get in waves in it yet, but this board was a perfect size for me to get up in lighter winds when I was just out last week in Florida, riding up to about 20 knots, so not a lot of wind. Yeah. And I was very pleased, again, with its efficiency, its lightness of feel. When you're turning, you're going your jives, your tacks, moving around, pumping, it just felt like, one, super light, two, it felt very well balanced, and, you know, you just felt, you know, really, you know,
They hit it out of the park. I think the hardest part now is Super K or Arc. And like you said, price point may be a factor in this guy. Because for me, I could see the Arc being a one board quiver for myself. I'm doing a lot of parawing nowadays. I think it's perfectly suited for that. Winging, You know, in moderate conditions and waves, blast, great. You know, even in high winds, it's a little bigger than I need, but there's no issues with this because it's not overly thick. It's not overly narrow. So I can still shred this in overhead waves and 40 knots of wind, no issues.
And I always say with that, your foiling skill is what comes into practice more than the board you're riding. So it's really about pairing of the foil, your foil skill in waves. And I agree, this board isn't going to get in your way.
No, not at all.
No.
So yeah, back to the question, Super K2 or ARC. For me, I think price not considered, I'd be firmly in the ARC camp.
So would I.
I like that thinner cockpit. I like the shape a lot. I like a little extra width without having to gain extra volume. So when I asked Keith last year for this board, he delivered, man. He killed it.
He did.
He killed it with the Surfy Super K, the SSK, or the ARC, as they've named it. But I think with the price, it's hard. You know, they only offer this in the Pro Construction, which is about $400 to $500 more than your regular carbon construction.
So we're looking around $2,500.
So yeah, you do get the benefit of a stiffer board, a more durable board, about 1.5 pounds lighter depending on the size. So there's real benefits there for sure.
It's a premium board,
but you're in $2,300 to $2,600.
This is like a Ferrari.
So it's a pretty expensive kit.
It's a high end board that if you're willing to pay a little extra money for, I think you're not going to be disappointed with the performance.
Yep.
How it feels. It would be a one board quiver for me.
And honestly, I think it's going to kind of cannibalize the Super K Pro Carbon because it's the new model. It's got that wave performance that a lot of people are looking for. So I do expect this to do a lot better this year. Whereas the Super K and the regular carbon construction, I think, is going to work really well for those people that want that value of a carbon board, a digestible price without having to spend the extra cash. So that'll continue to do well as well. But yeah, I think the ARC is my new favorite in the KT lineup personally.
I would agree, and it could be a little confusing. So those of you that love your KT boards, great boards. I did have a little reservation of why isn't this the new Super K? But given more time understanding its construction and how it's built and its design, it is different. But it is a board that I would probably choose now. Obviously, for a one board quiver, I would choose the ARC.
Maybe that's where the value makes sense, right? Like, do you want to pay $2,000 for two boards? It's $4,000 total, or do you want to pay $2,600, $2,500 for a board that kind of does it all and has some more versatility? I think the ARC does deliver on that promise. So maybe that's where it makes sense if you're jumping from a two-board quiver.
I would agree, and you said something about durability. Sometimes when you go to a lightweight board, high-end board, you have to be real careful.
Yeah, it's like ding.
But this one, you can tell just by its construction that's not going to be an issue. So excited. The ARC isn't going to be in this color. This was just a prototype that they sent us. We don't really have the color, but I'm sure it'll come out pretty soon.
It'll be more visible than this, I think, at a
though.
distance. I think the blue is really cool and the silver, but on the open water, if you're 10 miles out to sea and need to be found, maybe not quite as good as something more flashy and flamboyant. Also, doing this resin tint through the factory would be a different thing. It would probably add weight to the total build. So stay tuned for the hot new graphics. When we release this video, you'll be able to click into the link down below and see what the real one looks like with all the fancy production graphics and lighter weight paint job and all of that. So
nice work, KT. Stay tuned.
2 thumbs up, guys.
That's right.
Keep up the good work. We do typically try to point out something that's not great. I don't know that I can do it on this board other than price, but
yep, that's about the only thing I can think of.
Want to take a swing at it, Mr. Duff?
No, I've ridden it now about 6 sessions.
You can always be lighter. You can always be tougher. You can always be cheaper.
I don't know about lighter.
But those 3 things don't come together.
I would say that, it's the surf design, the shape, the build quality, and the lightness. I'm being straight up. I've ridden a lot of boards. They nailed it here. I can't really think of a negative on this board. So when you're in the market for a high-end board that's going to have the return in performance, in my opinion, give us a call, send us an email, chat. We're here to help you out, kind of help make those decisions, right?
Absolutely. Help you on some sizing,
Yeah.
Talk with you about how it might work in your quiver, maybe where to put your foil when you're first starting out. Be happy to set you up, but Y'all have any comments, questions, anything you want to put in the comment section below? Maybe y'all were in Maui, got to try one of these. We'd love to hear from your experience as well. So put that in there. Subscribe to the channel as always to see more info like this and show you your appreciation for the information we're bringing to everybody out there.
Right on. Been Jeff here at MACkite.
And Tucker.
Oh, yeah. I said that's funny. We were talking right before we started the video that I looked like the homeless guy you pulled out of the ditch. That was awesome.